So my second topic to discuss with you guys is kind of the GIS and 911 situation, some of the things that have come up for discussion, some of the questions I've gotten, and then some of the things that we know are coming soon. So the very first one is some of the realities of living with the GOMSAG. If you are on the council's hosted solution, you have what is called a GOMSAG. That means that your master street address guide in AT&T's database has been replaced with data generated from your GIS. And that has proven to be a little tricky, like we always kind of knew it would be for people to get used to. One of the biggest things is that you cannot make direct changes to this GOMSAG. So if a telephone company calls you and says that they need you to extend a range or add a road, you cannot do that by just signing in and doing it. You have to go through whoever is handling your GIS data, and they have to make a submission. That takes a little time. And even if your GIS person is on the ball and can do that change and submit it today, it will still take as much as a week before it's seen in the MSAG. And the telephone companies, though we communicate that consistently, do not always understand it. So if they have contacted you or they're concerned about that time frame, this is what you can tell them. And if they don't like that answer, you can always route them to me. A lot of people have, and I'll do my best to explain to them what they should be looking for and what they should expect. Also, although it has happened so rarely that I don't even have an example to give you, GIS changes that would actually orphan a telephone record have to be reviewed and dealt with locally. And what that means is if your GIS person suddenly deletes the street, the main street in the middle of one of your towns, all of the telephone numbers along there would be orphaned, theoretically, in that database, meaning they wouldn't have a street to attach to. If that happens, it will throw an error within the system that somebody local has to review. We have actually only had it happen as a legitimate error one time, and we dealt with it directly with the GIS people, and it was taken care of. The PSAP didn't have to get involved. But it will be, as we move forward, as we're no longer kind of babying the project through, eventually you locally will be getting notified when something like this happens. And we'll have some instructions for you on what you can do and what your responsibilities are to go look at it. I just want to make sure I take every opportunity to remind you guys that that will be a local responsibility. Right now I'm handling it, but it will be coming locally as soon as we're comfortable that we understand how it's all working and we give you clear direction. So a couple of calls that a lot of people have gotten from phone companies that I wanted to talk about. The first one is the phone company knows for certain, and maybe they're even correct, that the address is right, but they can't get it to go into the system. Without going into the mucky details about this, this really doesn't have anything to do with your GIS data or your MSAG. It has to do with a field in the database that is known as exchange. It is a notification inside the database of what phone company has competitive responsibility for that area. This isn't a piece of information that you know or we know for certain. It's not in our bailiwick. But the phone companies are so used to doing something with it that when they go into the database and look for Main Street, they're looking for Main Street in their competitive area. So if, when the GOMSAG was created, that field was either left blank or it had another phone company's name on it, it was not something we did or you did, it was something that the telephone companies did. If it had the wrong thing on it, your local phone company might think it's not in there. That's not because it's not in there. It's because they're doing an automatic filter just for the stuff they think they care about. This is one of many procedural differences between the way things used to be and the way things are going to be that hasn't entirely been worked out. So if you get this question and you happen to remember, you can always say, have you tried taking the exchange off and searching that way? Or you can just communicate the problem to your GIS person and they know to communicate with me if they can't figure out why it's broken. The other frequent question that PSAPs have been getting from the phone companies is, this address is not in the MSAG, will you add it? And I have already addressed this just a couple of minutes ago, but it's worth repeating. It takes a little while. And we have had a couple of people not be patient, I'll put it that way. New phone service at, say, a new business that thought they had all the wheels greased at the local level, all of a sudden their phone can't go in and they're upset. And they're calling around thinking if they call enough, they can make this go faster. If they complain enough, if they are the squeaky wheel, they will get the grease. There is no grease. Okay? This wheel is not going to move any faster. It doesn't matter what they do. So, like I said, we've been trying to communicate this out to the phone companies, but we're not going to get everyone. And eventually they're going to take a difficult customer and say this is the PSAP's fault, and you're going to get this call. It's just kind of how it happens. So if somebody does tell you that an address isn't in the MSAG, you need to check with your GIS person and find out if it is in the GIS data and if it's been submitted. If it has recently, it could take a few days. If they say, hey, that's always been in there, then you need to communicate with me because there might be a problem in the way the GIS data was pushed up to the database. That's very rare, but it has happened a couple of times. The other thing that's coming up is emergency service boundaries. You probably hear a lot of talk on and off today about the fact that we're moving to geospatial call routing at the beginning of the year. But one of the things about geospatial call routing that is a pretty subtle change is these little things at the very bottom, the verify PD, verify FD, and verify EMS on this alley stream that I have up here for you. If this was a landline call, you would see Newton Police Department, Newton Fire, Newton EMS. You're used to seeing it. Your dispatchers may not pay any attention to it at all, or they may use it every day. It varies PSAP to PSAP. But that information is actually determined right now from a spreadsheet, essentially, that sits at AT&T called the ELT, or English Language Translation List. When we go geospatial, one of the fundamental changes is going to be that that information is no longer determined from that list. Instead, it will be determined from your GIS data. Particularly what's called the emergency service boundaries. The good thing about that is that you'll have local control over it much quicker than you do as an ELT list at the phone company. The bad thing about that is there are a whole lot of places where the PSAP has not actually taken a look at these emergency service boundaries that have been submitted. And some of them are not accurate. It's very important for you to get with your GIS person and say, can you show me what the fire layer looks like? Just so that you can be sure, yeah, it really cuts where our responder areas cut. And yes, the names they have in there make sense. Across the state, some people have super simple stuff in these ELTs. We have, for example, Abilene Police, Abilene Fire, Abilene EMS for the city of Abilene. There are other places where that information is very intricate. It's the police department, the first responding fire department, the backup fire department, the EMS department that will be sending an ambulance, and the first responder, as well as a note at the end about the rescue truck that might be going. If you're one of those agencies that's used to seeing all that information, you need to make sure that you take a look at the data, because I can almost guarantee you your GIS person was not prepared for that level of cutting the data up, and they may not have done it the way you want. Also, we found out from Motorola that there is a 32-character limit for each of these lines. That is much shorter than the national standard, and so the GIS people have had to take what they used to have 100 characters to do and swoosh it into 32. Now, maybe that swoosh isn't so hard. In our county, we didn't have anything over 20 characters. But if you are trying to say first responding fire department, backup fire department, rescue squad, all in 32 characters, are you sure your GIS person is abbreviating it in a way your PSAP can understand? It might make sense. And I know that a lot of people don't actually use these because they use CAD instead for their responder information, but remember that the whole point to a hosted system is good and easy backup moving from place to place, but if you move to that other place, you don't have CAD, you have this. So it's important that this be accurate even if you don't think you use it right now. So, any questions about this? Not a one? If you do have questions or you do have trouble that comes up, let me know. What I want to warn you all about is that we are going to be hitting your GIS data maintainer with a couple of changes they have to make to this data. Because when we submit it into the next-gen 911 system for geospatial call routing, there are tests performed on it, and there are a couple of them that are giving us fits. They don't match the tests that we already performed. Now, we talk to them about this on a pretty regular basis, but because geospatial is coming at the beginning of the year, and a couple of these test failures are new to us, we're going to be communicating out with your GIS people and saying, hey, you have this problem you have to fix. You got to fix it kind of quick. Kind of quick is within a few months. It's not like it's tomorrow or anything. But I want you guys to understand, since I have your attention right now, that until they do the fix we are giving them, if you go to geospatial call routing, you will only see where this says verify PD, fire, and EMS. You will only see Sedgwick County, check local maps. Montgomery County, check local maps. You won't see details. And that's because we're putting a placeholder in its place until your local data fits exactly and can pass the tests. Reno County is the only county that's currently set up to do that. And right now what we are submitting is Reno County in detail, since Reno is the beta test. And then the rest of the state, including my own county, just say Dickinson County, see local maps. So if you go geospatial and you start seeing that, you start seeing Butler County or whatever, that's why. And you can begin either communicating with your GIS person, or if they feel like they've done everything they need to, you guys can communicate with us, and we'll be happy to work with you to get the problem solved. But it's something I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on. So like I said, I will be here through the day. If anything else comes up or you have any questions that you didn't want to ask in the big group, you're welcome to come over and hit me up. Thank you guys.